having a disability is seen as something bad. But let me share some of the perks of being in this wheelchair. Well, one, my shoes, they're always brand new. Two, I always have a seat wherever I go. There is always the chance of running someone over in case we get into disagreement.
It's all accidental.
As accidental was an accident. And there is a constant opportunity to exceed expectations, because one of the cons of having a disability is that society has very low expectations of us. And to be honest, I don't blame individuals, because that is a social issue. Before ending up in this wheelchair, I was the kind of person that would avoid looking or interacting with someone with a disability. Very likely because I never had the opportunity to interact with someone with a disability. I was the very first person that I met in a wheelchair. I had a healthy, active life until May 2001, when one day I felt unwell. A week later, I went to hospital, and in 48 hours, I was totally paralyzed. Alongside my movements, I also lost many of the rights I took for granted in my life. I pushed myself very hard for 8 years, pursuing my goal to walk again, and truly believing that I would overcome the biggest challenge of my life to walk again. I decided that I would achieve whatever I dream about. So I created a TV show. My autobiography was published in 2010 and sold more than 30,000 copies. I was doing inspirational speeches, winning awards for Best True Story, you name it. Everything was possible. But after publishing the book, I received an email of a mother of a young girl called Bruna. She was 9 years old and she was also in a wheelchair. And her mom said to me, "Can we arrange a meeting so Bruna can meet a woman in a wheelchair that is doing things, to be a role model for her?" And that changed everything. If you have a disability, the message everywhere is you are less, you are burden, you cost, you cannot. And that was when I realized that maybe walk again wasn't that so important. And maybe I could use all that energy, focus, passion, and drive that I had to walk again into something else, something bigger than me, to fight for the rights of people with disabilities. Living as a disabled woman in Brazil offered me plenty of challenges, and I faced discrimination several times. But I always fought back. Then in 2012, I came to New Zealand on holiday to visit my siblings. And as a tourist, I had the privilege to traveling all over New Zealand. There were always accessible places, things to do. And I thought, oh my God, I can live in a place that is perfect, that is ready, and I would never face discrimination again. So I moved to New Zealand full of confidence. In 2 months, I sat the IELTS. I scored 7.5. A month later, I took a job in the disability sector, a role with national scope and Queen Street, 10th floor. I had a window that I couldn't see the sea. I was on top of my game. But in 2014, I applied to become a resident under the skilled migrant category. Back then, you needed 100 points to qualify. I had 175. But I stumbled in the immigration policy of the health requirement. The policy has a list of conditions, including all types of disabilities and some chronic health issues. And if you have any of those conditions, lucky me, I had 2, lupus and being paraplegic. Immigration must decline your residency unless you have a medical waiver. The medical waiver weighs up the cost you are likely to impose to the system against your ties to New Zealand. Well, I had family here. They also evaluate your potential contribution to the country. I was in full-time employment, and I have track record of my career in Brazil. They also evaluate the level of cost you might impose to the system. My lupus was stable for the past 10 years, and I already have learned how to live independently in a wheelchair. I thought I had a chance. The process was lengthy, bureaucratic, costly, stressful. And after some time, that bubbly, confident woman that I was started to question if persisting was the right decision. All the uncertainty and the humanization of the process took a toll on my health. And at the end of 2015, I had a lupus flare triggered by stress. I was in hospital when I received a letter from immigration declining my residency. One day after my discharge, I was in the lawyer's office preparing my appeal against the immigration decision. And I appealed not only because I love New Zealand and I want to be here with my family, but because giving up go against my core values. I tell you, to fight the system, a system that discriminates, was the hardest thing I ever faced in my life. The medical waiver process annihilated my self-esteem and destroyed my joy to live. The emotional toll was way worse than becoming paraplegic. A system that discriminates can take away from you everything you need to live and to survive. I lost my job because I lost my visa. I lost my health because of the stress. I was on the brink of being separated from my family because I got to the point that I was facing deportation because I was taking a stand when I said, I'm not leaving New Zealand because of my impairment. I'm not leaving New Zealand because of my disability. I got inspiration from the civil rights movement, and there was one thing that the system couldn't take away from me, and that was my hope, because that's a power within. I was really scared of taking this stand and keeping on fighting to stay here. But there's a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt that says, courage is not absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear. And you know what is more important than my fear? Challenge the status quo, that people with disabilities are a burden. Challenge the status quo, that people with disabilities cannot contribute to society. So I put my fear aside and I choose to fight to stay in New Zealand until the end. So I really call for the change in this immigration policy. This policy is short-sighted. Really talented people like Van Gogh, Thomas Edison, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Beethoven, Stephen Hawking, Frida Kahlo, just to name a few, would not be welcome to be here just because of the impairment. This policy needs to evolve. Remember, not long ago, women could not vote. Full stop, that was the law. Slavery was law. Racial segregation was law. But because of the courage and persistence, like Rosa Parks, for example, of we all here today, because our resistance and courage, as a society, we keep evolving. I have a dream that in the future we will say, oh, can you believe that discrimination on disability grounds was acceptable in 2021? I truly believe we can make change. Today I will deliver my petition. Jen Logie will represent me later on doing all the bureaucratic process. Oh, you there? You can come here so I can do the... So, through my campaign, Let Her Stay, I use my personal story as a vector for transformation because, as Johanna say, I'm not the only one. Right now, I know of a couple. They came from the UK and had the working towards the residency visa. They had a baby here. The baby has the developmental delays, and now they want to kick them out. You know, it's just not fair. Anyway, 34,735 people so far signed this petition, and they want to change. Thank you. right? I don't know. I woke up 3 a.m. this morning. I just don't know what I'm saying. I know that I'm getting married today. That's what I heard.
Let's leave it in your memory.
Yeah, yeah. So just keep on fighting, guys. ACC will cover.
That's a work safe issue right there. Looks like we have got a politician.